Hi again, I'm Taylor Siebertson, a Community Development Research Assistant at North Dakota State University. The culture of a community can be really interesting because it can be hyper-local. Sometimes even neighborhoods within one city will identify with differing cultures. Cultural capital can be the values and symbols that are reflected in our music, art, language, and customs. It also can be thought of as a sort of local cosmovision, or the way we see the world around us. It can be impacted by social and economic factors, as well as qualities like race and ethnicity. As we explore the cultural capital here in Barnesville, we'll focus on three areas. Unique events, the area's history, and the shared values of the people will be further explored. If you've ever visited Barnesville, you know that residents and visitors alike live for that special time of year right at the end of summer, Potato Days. The sign that welcomes you to town foretells the area's attachment to their very special event. The celebration began in 1938 as a potato picking contest and was a time for the community to celebrate the humble potato that had played an important role in building Barnesville's economy. Nearly 80 years later, Potato Days lives on. With delicious food, potato-themed contests, pageants, races, and revelry, Potato Days is an important event for this community. Not to be overshadowed, the Clay County Fair is an annual countywide event that also calls Barnesville home. Like all good county fairs, this one boasts carnival rides and games, musical entertainment, all the fried foods, exhibitions from local 4-H groups, and wholesome entertainment for the whole family. These two events have had a long history in Barnesville. Although life has changed in many ways since the town's official establishment in 1889, a look at the past can often help us better understand the relationships, economics, and other patterns present today. Jean Prim, Barnesville City Mayor, shares a brief look at some of the historical turning points in the community's history.
My name is Jean Prim. I'm editor and owner publisher of the Barnesville Record Review. Barnesville, been in that position since '72, been with the newspaper since 1960. Also serve as Barnesville Mayor. I've done that on 3 separate occasions for about 14 years total. Kind of an amateur historian on Barnesville. We do a column each week on photo memories is what we call it, but we try to go back at least 20 to 30 years and sometimes as long as 100 or 50, depending on what picture we're featuring that week. Learned a little bit of knowledge about the community that way. Some of the gray hairs like me can still remember what was happening back then, and some of those that are younger understand why things are the way they were because what we did back then. Barnesville started about halfway between Downer and Barnesville in a railroad car owned and operated by a fellow named George Barnes. He had, for all intents and purposes, a general store on a railroad track. So that's how the town settled. Settled on the west side of the tracks originally. And don't know what the major disagreement was, but about 1882 was when the original city was chartered. And by that time the decision had been made to move east of the tracks, and that's where Front Street went in, and that's when most of the buildings that still exist were built 1880s, 1888 to about 1910 is when most of those buildings went up. Another turning point, I suppose, would be probably 32 through 1936 when they paved Highway 52 through the middle of town here. That made a major highway and it ran right through the middle of the community. 1970, Interstate 94 ran or opened, and that gave us easy access to Fargo-Moorhead. 2011, we redid Front Street down here for the first time, rebuilt everything in our within our downtown infrastructure. The thing that has happened throughout from about 1970 till now, we have probably doubled our geographical footprint, and I would have to put a number somewhere around 350 new homes built here. Those are some of the high spots of what's happened. Sure, I've left out a lot, but can't get them all.
Barnesville's rich history has been sustained in large part by the strong values that the community members share. In the time we've spent here, it's become clear that family, faith, and patriotism are 3 widely held collective values.
One thing we haven't talked about is the churches within the community, and we have a bunch of them. They're all pretty much the backbone of the community. That's where people go to, take care of their religious beliefs, but it's also kind of a home for a lot of them. They've been a guiding influence for Barnesville's 140-year history, and they continue to be that.
We've now outlined a number of assets in the community. Jean discussed the history and values of Barnesville, and we took a brief look at a few of the important celebrations and events that Barnesville locals partake in. Depicting these assets in a graphic representation can be helpful. In doing so, asset mapping provides a clearer way to understand how resources may be mobilized to assess development considerations. As this video has shown, Barnesville's cultural capital assets can be described through their collective values, rich history, and the traditions they've shared in over the years. Culture is embodied in large-scale and long-standing traditions, but also in the small ways that people express the things that matter most. The cultural capital of Barnesville is supported by the collective worldview that people here contribute to daily and pass on to subsequent generations. Tapping into these assets has obvious economic and sociological implications that work to further strengthen the community.